search.
All righty, it is 7:02. We'll call this city council meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Doing a roll call, all voting members are present. I will open it up for public comment. If there's any public comment tonight, just come forward and state your name and address for the record. Hearing none, we will close the public comment. We'll go on to adopting the agenda. Are there any changes or additions?
Good evening, Council. There are no changes to what's presented before you. However, there were some revisions made about an hour ago. So if someone did look at the packet, just want to say that there are a few items that were recently added. That includes K1, municipal dispensary discussion, K8, contractor email list discussion, and K9, illuminate Isani operation discussion.
Great, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda, if that all sounds good.
Second.
Oh, I'll make the motion, that sounds good.
That's what you said.
No, I said I'll entertain, that's all right. I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda, and Councilmember Lundin seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. City council meeting minutes from January 21st, Committee of a Whole. If there's any questions on those? Or I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lundin, second by Councilmember Holmgren. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. For the city council meeting minutes now from January 21st. Any questions on those?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion to approve from Councilmember Holmgren, second from Councilmember Heeman. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Announcements, city offices will be closed Monday, February 17th, 2025, in observance of President's Day. Committee of a Whole meeting Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Planning Commission meeting Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 at 6 p.m. City Council meeting Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 at 7 p.m. And the Park and Rec Board meeting Tuesday, February 25th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Council committee reports. Are there any council committee reports tonight?
I got one.
Have at it.
I had my yearly Cambridge Isani Bike Walk Trail meeting, short meeting, but we had some discussion on replacing of the boards of the bridge, so Matt was gonna, at some point, walk the trail with a person from Cambridge and do an assessment.
I'm gonna walk the trail this spring to look at the boards.
And then I asked about how long that bridge is gonna last, and then maybe come up with a replacement plan, so we can have some money in the bank account before we need to replace it. Because it is over water, so it'll be a little expensive, I'm assuming, at the time.
So Matt, I actually had a question on that. Is that on pans or on piers? Do you know? The boardwalk? Do you know the design of it?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll check back in with you on that. I'm curious about how long, if it's pans, how long they've lasted and what design and whatnot. So the county park is actually looking into doing some pretty substantial boardwalks, and I wanted to check on that for them.
So, just real quick on that, on the bike walk trail, if the bridge is in need of repair, we do make a capital contribution to them annually. That is, the city of Cambridge would be the caretaker of those funds.
That's
So-
$7,500 a year, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, whoever their representative is at the meeting should be able to at least periodically provide some understanding of what that account balance is and what has been set aside and those kinds of things.
Yeah,
Because if they are gonna ask for additional funding, yeah, I would like to know way in advance.
Yep, and I just wanna, after they do their assessment on just the range, and if we need to replace it in 15, 20 years, and then try to get, kinda like what you do here, just a replacement plan.
Well, and encourage them to start budgeting for that. Even though I will, but
Yeah.
maybe we can get another organization to go along with us on that, yeah.
Yep.
Any other council committee reports?
Park and Rec was a little uneventful. thought the most interesting thing we talked about was maybe having movie nights at the amphitheater and a message board at Bluebird Park. We'll see how things go. I think we need to work closer with Park and Rec and let them know what kind of funding, they have available so they can be more realistic in their short-term goals. We should maybe have that on Kyle, one of these in the near future, and give them a little bit more direction, I think.
Okay. So I had my monthly school board meeting. This month, there was a school showcase on the Cambridge-Iceni Woodland Brookside campus. That's the school off of Highway 65 by Bjorklands. I thought I'd just give a little rundown. I was always curious on what that school was and what it looked like inside. So there are 5 teachers in that building, roughly 20 to 30 students, generally special ed type students. So they can receive more hands-on class instruction, personalized and more attentive to their needs. Generally, their students are rotated, at least in some aspect, between the regular school district buildings and that building, which I thought was interesting and good to give a diverse experience for them. The school's financial audit also came back clean, other than a few very small administrative errors, typo type stuff. Their fund balance is roughly $32 million, with expected expenditures near the $70 million mark per year. This year, they came in roughly $8 million under budget, but that's because they had some wage negotiations that have been loaded and bus purchases that were made but not expended before the end of the year audit. They did bond, unfortunately, for $6 million of capital improvements. We've talked about bonding in here quite a bit and the impact that has. So I actually asked to have a meeting with the finance director for the school district and get an explanation on that. So I met with him and a school board member, and we talked about that. And you could tell that he had put quite a bit of thought into that bond, obviously, and he had done some long-term projections, and I think it was necessary. But I wanted people to be aware that they are having to bond for money. So just to be aware of that, you might see a small increase in taxes based on that bond. And another interesting thing, it's kind of I would like to see a little bit more work from all the cities and townships around. He said in his entire time being the manager of the finances for the school district, not a single city representative or township representative has ever met with him. So I guess this is just a message for anybody that's in leadership to get out there and, there's not much more important in our community than kids. So I don't know if that's, I would like to see more of that from our city leadership, city council members, mayors, and township supervisors. Yeah, elected officials, sorry.
Are you talking about Chris? We meet
Yeah, I was gonna
Chris.
say,
Yeah, no.
I've met with him a bunch of times.
Elected, sorry, that's why, yeah,
And begged him for joint capital planning items, but yeah.
yes. So yeah, everything's on the up and up at the school. The budget was looking pretty good, and they passed through the audit with good numbers, so. Anybody else? All right, so we will move on to business item K1, municipal dispensary discussion.
Thank you, Council. I'm going to have Liquor Store Manager Lusk kick this off, and then we'll also hear from Finance Director Becker.
Okay, Mayor and Council, thank you for having me tonight. We started this conversation at the last council meeting, and I'm glad that we're continuing it. I did give you each kind of a handout, and the first page is a lot of what we talked about at the last meeting. I do have some stuff in bold that I added to this. If you want me to go over the whole thing, I can. Otherwise, I can just touch on the bold stuff. But the Iceni Municipal Cannabis Dispensary would not just be a business venture, but a community-focused initiative designed to enhance public safety, contribute significantly to our local economy, and uphold our community values. There are some municipalities moving forward with cannabis dispensaries. They include St. Anthony Village, Grand Rapids, which isn't on this sheet, but they are the city of Byron, Anoka, Ely, and Newport are some of them that I'm aware of. And St. Anthony Village is working with a consulting firm, Voyager Cannabis Service. Byron is working with a consulting firm called Delaney Consulting. We did talk a little bit about, you know, I mentioned the Red Pine Equity Group had approached some cities asking to partner with them using their cannabis license to operate a dispensary. The second handout that I have for you is from that Kennedy and Graven, and that was a memo to the city of St. Joseph. Their attorney had looked at the proposal from Red Pine, and that kind of lays out some of the concerns they had with that. I share those concerns. A lot of it is that what the Red Pine Group is trying to do doesn't necessarily match up with the current law. Like what cities can't partner with a corporation. And basically, a big part of that is if we were to get a cannabis license, we can't share that license with, we can only have one license. And if we were to partner with somebody like Red Pine and they have an agreement with another city, and another city or another city, well, you're partnering with multiple cities, and that isn't legal.
Quick question, one license is 5 retail?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
So, and that's on the first part there, just to clarify, a cannabis retailer may operate up to 5 retail locations. However, no person, cooperative, or business may hold a license to own or operate more than 1 cannabis retail business in 1 city or 3 retail businesses in 1 county.
So could we, in theory, open shop in North Branch?
That thought has crossed my mind. And
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of aggressive like that. You know, I'd like to see it do well here and then just, you know, keep going. But I don't know if that's legal because cities are different than your typical applicant. You know, we don't have to go through the lottery process. We just have to apply by the deadline and meet all the qualifications. So I don't know if we'd be able to, say, partner with Cambridge or partner with North Branch or anybody, you know, because North Branch is in a different county. Does that count towards the 3? You know, that would be something that I would really be interested in looking at once our operation is up and running and generating revenue. I think we'd have more of an argument for that.
That might be an interesting way to protect the whole county from, you know, potentially bad things happening. I know the county was a little more risk averse on their discussion on this and their rules. So that might be something that would be interesting to talk to with the county. I never thought about that aspect of that.
And one other thing to keep in mind too, speaking to that is, you know, if a city is awarded a license, that total doesn't count towards the minimum number required. So if we were awarded a license, there'd still be at least one other dispensary in town.
Could be.
Well, there would be my assumption. And in my opinion, awesome, that's great. You know, give people options. We're still gonna give them the best service, the best pricing, you know, and we're gonna uphold the community values as we're doing that as well.
Sure. So I know I've kind of beat the bush on this quite a bit, but the state handed us a legalization process that was extremely poorly done on the policy side of things, and I think they've created too many opportunities for dishonest businesses to come in and not practice safely within the community. I think that we combat that with potentially looking at our own municipal. You know, we can protect our residents by giving them a service that we know is safe and that we know is not being, you know, tactfully done just to make money and leave our community. We're gonna be here forever. So I think that's an important thing, not to mention the direct offset on our tax bills, which I think is obviously the biggest incentive, but keeping the community safer, reducing taxes. Now, if you look at what Mike has presented here on this number sheet with very conservative numbers, and I think if you look at the staffing here, I've been to a couple in Colorado, and they actually have less staffing because they have their person that works the door also work the register. So you have a line at the door, like a staging area. You let people in, and then you help that one person. And then when they're done being helped and checked out, they leave, and then the next person comes in. Now, Colorado has that law in some areas to protect the stores. And I think that's something that we could do to actually increase our profit margin here. So if you look at these numbers, The profit margin there would create roughly a 4% reduction in taxes. That means the average household would roughly save $75 a year in taxes from the revenue on that. That's only about $7 per month, but every dollar counts when you're talking about taxes. I think if you look at the lease option, it gives us a very good avenue to kind of test the market with very little initial investment, so there's not much risk for us. It's just also safer for the community. The police can come into our own establishment. The legislation is going to tie our hands of the police department and not allow us to do very much with private businesses, and I think that's a dangerous thing for our community. So that's really all I have to say about it.
If I could, the sheet that I put together here, I did not put a ton of time into this because I didn't understand there to be direction that would warrant a bunch of time. Most of what you see presented before you is basically what I sketched out during the last meeting when we discussed this, just out of my own head. I did do probably hour of fixes and research and things, just to get some understanding whether or not this could work. But when I was writing this up originally, it was sort of, all right, how many people do I think I need? What are my costs? Rough math. And all right, if I'm going to turn a profit that is going to make sense, what does sales then need to be? So that's how I ended up at 2.6 million. From what I can tell from other states that have gone forward with this, from what I can tell, amazingly, at least to my mind, amazingly, 2.6 is apparently a very, very conservative number, which, I mean, objectively, when I think about it, I think, well, that seems a little high. But from all the research I can find, all the numbers that are out there, all the data from other states that have already gone before, apparently I should be talking about numbers that are, twice that size, apparently. I talked to our bank, because of course that was like the biggest crux, is like, if this is a cash business, I don't have anywhere to put the cash, that's a deal breaker all by itself. They said that they would need their executive board to vote on it. They expected that the vote would be affirmative, but they would not actually receive the cash. The cash would be picked up weekly by an armored service and actually delivered to the Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis, where they would count it and then give basically a memo of confirmation to the bank saying, yep, we will honor that deposit and we will make that deposit to your account. The bank would then subsequently pass that deposit on to the city. So that is how that would work. But yeah, otherwise, this document should not be considered a planning document for final approval of,
Very rough
but
draft.
it's meant to give a ballpark, like, hey, could this even conceivably possibly work, is what I was trying to get to.
The only numbers I could find for dispensaries was for the year 2023. And it looked like only 29% of all dispensaries actually made a profit. Approximately 40% broke even, and the rest were in a hole.
I hate to be a devil's advocate on that, but it's a cash business.
I
And
know.
it's pretty hard
I know,
to prove cash.
I know. And
So
those were the
speak
only
to that,
real numbers I found.
George, what state was that in?
That was nationwide. That was all the dispensaries that they surveyed nationwide.
Well, part of the reason that the state is taking so long to roll out the cannabis dispensary licensing and everything is because they're trying to their best ability to not get the market oversaturated, where the people that do have licenses have a better chance of making a profit. Compared to other states like Oklahoma, Colorado, where there's dispensaries on every corner. And, another part of what the state is doing is they're not allowing places to not issue licenses, so there isn't that black market, where it's cheaper to go talk to your guy down the street and get a bag and not pay tax or anything. So there is some things built into this program to keep that kind of thing from happening.
I mean, looking at the startup costs, it's enticing. I mean, it's comparable to how much money we flush down the toilet on a winter event here, so. It's,
One thought that I have too, and I did mention this last time, I know if we were to go forward with this, we're obviously we're not going to build a building by the liquor store, but down the road, if we were to show that this is successful in, in town here anywhere, and then we had the opportunity to put up a building right by the liquor store,
Right.
and we captured that traffic stopping at the liquor store, that's like double dipping right there. I mean, we're getting twice as much income, revenue right there, and people are, on their way through town.
so your thought is to build a model, try it out, rent a building. Have you looked at any buildings? Is there any lease opportunities that you have in the back of your mind in town?
I haven't gotten that far. I'd lean on Mike for that more so.
Okay,
So,
Yeah,
but-
I've got a spot picked out.
But,
okay.
yeah, if given the
So it
opportunity,
would be
I would make sure we make a profit.
Well,
So it'd be comparable to these numbers, the spot you're thinking in the back of your mind?
Let's just say that we're still waiting on confirmation for what the lease would be, but based on the square footage we'd be looking at, for 1,500 square feet, I don't think that it should be $60,000 a year.
Okay.
well, first of all, I've
I think
never
that'd be a
been a
little
fan
steep.
of the city getting involved in this, but it is what it's gonna be. Second of all, we should look at what it would cost to build that size of building with the potential to add on before we go start leasing. Second of all, you got that other lot next to the liquor store. If it failed, it's a heck of a lot easier to sell a piece of property with a building on it than it is an empty lot.
Good point.
So we would not be out all that money if it didn't work. So before we go jumping into wanting to lease something, I think we should look at a revenue, what it would cost to build that building and get it operation in that empty lot next to us. Because I guarantee you, we're gonna sell that lot with a building on it a heck of a lot easier than it is just sitting empty.
I don't think you'll get my vote if we have to invest that much.
You're gonna invest, if
I
your
would
payment
like
is
to see
that,
it work. I'd like to see there's a market for it and that we could build upon that
if
before
you
we
look at a
just.
$60,000 payment for a lease, you don't own it, you're just borrowing it. And if the building payments were less than that, that would still be even that much farther ahead. And then you'd be able to sell it if it failed.
That's still way less than we spend on a lot of other things.
Well, I think.
Well, I'm just saying, it's
Sure.
a better turnover for your money if it didn't work.
Tonight, I don't think we're necessarily discussing, obviously, the long-term plan tonight. I think we just need a plan for if we want to apply for the permit or not. There's a $5,000 application for that. I've been told we would meet all the requirements. So I think that's the direction we need to figure out if we want to consider it tonight. I personally think it's a good thing to look into. Another thing we didn't mention, the free market is obviously all of us here believe in the free market, and we wouldn't be limiting other people from coming in. But what we would do is if we got this permit, we would make Isani a softer target for people that just want to come in and get rich off our community and leave. So I think that's the biggest benefit that we get out of this, is we can protect our residents. There's a lot of residents that aren't happy, or not a lot, but there's a fair amount that are unhappy that the legislation was passed to begin with. And I think if we do the steps to make it as safe as we can possible for them and reduce their taxes at the same time, I think it's a great idea. So I guess I would entertain a motion unless there's a lot more conversation, to, apply for the permit, and then I guess go from there. Well, I'm sure it'll be a ton of discussion in the future.
Personally, I'd like to see a consensus on whether we lease or we decide to build. Because if we end up building something, we're gonna be stuck, and then we're gonna have a money pit, because we're not gonna wanna get out of it until we've actually lost a good chunk of money.
Well, I think
So
Steve,
So I think that just the logistics of the current situation solve that problem. So we have a deadline, middle of March, to be able to apply for the permit. So that's kind of the first hurdle. And once you do that, given that this is a new market in the state of Minnesota, early entry is going to be a huge advantage. So you wouldn't want to necessarily wait for a build. To be honest, if I started for a build on the lot immediately north of the liquor store now, I probably don't actually have it open for about 24 months. That's about as fast as we can really pull this through, bid it out, get it in the ground. It's just gonna take time. I don't think that that's a good idea. What I would prefer is, in a location that I have in my mind, I would prefer to have a 5-year lease that is 2-year commitment with 3rd, 4th, and 5th year at our option, right? So that if we need to pull the plug after 2 years, because we're like, nope, not working, done. All right, we can walk away. But then at the end of that 2nd or 3rd year, we can say, you know what? I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to work, and this warrants a more robust investment. Then we have that timeline to be able to move forward and get to the east side of 65, which I think would be a more advantageous location than the one I have in my mind. But I think that's how it's got to go, because otherwise, if we're going to say we're building today, that means we're also not opening for 2 years. I think that's too late in a new market.
Yeah, I would like to see 12 months of data before we commit $2-3 million on a building of taxpayers' funds.
Well, it shouldn't be that much. Based on setbacks for that lot north of the liquor store, about 1,200 square feet of retail space is about as big as you can get, so it's not going
Ain't
to
gonna
be,
be $2-3
it won't be a
million.
$2-3 million build. But it won't be, I mean, it's not going to be cheap, right? I mean, it's not free. But I would agree. My thought is, if we're going to go forward with it, let's not commit huge amounts of money until we can see this going. We're going to build a building, that's fine, but let's have, you say 12 months, I prefer 24, 36. I'd want to actually not just see like, hey, this was the new store and it did well in 12 months. Like, what is the trend, right? Did we do well in 12 months and now it's going, because if it's 12 months was our peak and now we're just going down, 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 get out, cut your losses. This is how I see it.
I like Steve's idea. I know there was a potential business owner that was looking at that lot, and if they said it was already developed and they could get in it, they would probably buy it just because of the location. So I think that's a great idea for the long-term future. And the best thing about that lot is we can share parking lots too, and some of the staff, infrastructure. I think it's a good idea, but the leasing is the safest option and not a whole lot of initial investment for a pretty sizable return, hopefully. So, and I think these numbers are conservative, just based on the research I've done too.
Did you find municipals that were similar size that you're saying that these numbers are low, or?
No,
what
I'm
was
just
the-
looking at the staffing. The staffing, I know, Mike has it pretty conservative with, I believe it's 4 staff members.
Yeah, it would be 1 entry, 1 point of sale, 1 order fulfillment, and then 1 supervisor. And then my basis here is that you would only be open 7 hours, and so everyone would work at a standard 8-hour shift. I would prefer to not have a bunch of part-time. The one personnel that's success contingent would be a part-timer, but I would prefer to not have a bunch of part-time. That'd be my personal preference. Keep everybody 8-hour shifts and, stick to fewer hours than the liquor store, let's say that. I think there's a good case to be made that being open at 9 or 10 in the morning isn't necessarily warranted. Maybe the market shows us something different a year or 2 down the road, but at least initially.
So the money that we collect in taxes, we get a percentage of that back in one form or another. Because anything within the county gets,
Yeah, there would be.
Divvied
yeah,
up.
Yeah, there would be, as statute sits right now, yes, we would be getting a cut.
So-
It's not gonna be a particularly giant amount, but yes.
so in a sense, we'd have a 1 or 2% margin better than our competitors.
Well, yeah, in theory. I mean, now to make that functionally happen, we'd have to have, you'd have a transfer in to that enterprise fund and then a transfer out. Now, initially, this is the other thing to keep in mind too, is that initially, if we do really well in the first year, we have a net profit of $100,000 to $150,000. No one should expect that money to get transferred back out in the first year, right? You got to get that fund back into the black. Then you get to start pulling money out.
Right.
But we're going to have, $400,000 or whatever out the door right out of the chute. So you probably do need 5 years to replace that money, build that fund back up, get into the black, and then get to start talking about transfers out that reduce taxes in a meaningful way.
I don't know, there's a lot of unknowns.
There is, but I think, you know, if you look at that, even knocking out $50,000 just by doing the strategy that they have at most dispensaries, where there's one person that, you know, one person that basically opens the door for people, lets them in, then they look around, they check out the person, and then the customer leaves, and then the next one comes in. So then it's totally safe, and you can eliminate one of those positions, even if it goes, you know, you're not making the revenue you thought, well, there's, you know, $50,000 you could cut out. But, you know, I did look at a couple places in Colorado. I didn't look at the population, I should have looked at that, but I think, you know, our sales of our liquor store, our sales of our Coborns, and our sales at Quick Trip have sort of proven that our population here isn't the only number that determines sales, because we have the #1 Quick Trip in the state, or as far as 2 years ago it was. The Coborns, I believe, is the #1. Our liquor store is doing crazy numbers. So, you know, if you look at just population, it might not sound like a lot, but I think we draw quite a few people here. So I think those numbers were pretty low on the sales, like Mike had mentioned. They're really conservative. Some of those are $10 million in revenue. So it's, you know, I think those numbers are fair, and there's definitely room for success. But it's always a risk, but at this point, it's,
Our bank, they've allowed dispensaries, right? 2 or 3 other times, he said. Every time by a vote by executive board, they've got to go through their processes. But yeah, he thought 2.6 million was actually a little bit funny, so.
so tonight to go forward, we would need a motion to potentially talk about, go ahead, Nick, sorry.
One thing I wanted to bring up is that with the people I've talked to, some people have moral concerns about the city endorsing this. And I think that before we do anything, we should get more community feedback before we start getting a solid answer on it. Because we all talked about that we like the culture, we like the community, and this is gonna be a culture change if we're gonna be endorsing this, so I think more community input would be warranted.
I'm just gonna say, I don't think we have a problem with that. I think it'd be more of a personal, moral decision. We have a very young community.
Average age here is
I would
31.
have to say the majority.
32 now.
Right, I would have to say the majority would be okay with it myself, just because of how young of a community it is. But
And I think the sales, the thing that, you know, is a little harder to understand is whether we have one or not, there's going to be people that come here, and you don't want that company that, you know, there are companies that are really awful business-wise, and they don't care about their customers, they just want to make money. You know, they don't care about, you know, safety and things like that as much as we might. So I think there's some value there, just to protect your residents. And, you know, if we hold the deck, you know, we can play it to how our residents want it, versus if another company holds the deck, if there's theft, if there's any sort of crime, we can't go in without a warrant. Unless there's someone's life in danger, we can't go in as a police department, you know, and I think that's a big risk too.
I understand all the upsides, I'm just saying that the people I've talked to who are in that younger crowd do have some concerns as far as what the unseen effect would be to culture and communities, so. I'm not saying, no, I'm just saying we should get more direct feedback on that. I've reached out to who I can, but if we have a way to put a poll up on the website or on Facebook or some kind of call for feedback.
Ultimately, in the end, you know, either at this meeting or at the first meeting in March is basically the time. We gotta just say, we have enough info and we're willing to spend $5,000 to keep the process going. We're not committing to going forward, but that's kind of the cutoff window where you either put your $5,000 in and potentially go forward, or you don't put your money in and you are not going forward.
right,
That's really the impetus at this point, is to figure that out.
Would that license be transferable or no?
No, not if it's issued to a municipality.
how does that work with the 75-25 split stuff? I know we had talked about that where you have the city gets the permit and then another company operates it with that permit. How does that work on that aspect? Is that something that could be our backup plan?
Well, that could sure be a backup plan. I personally don't think that that's a good idea at all.
Just
Right.
to read from what this other lawyer had said is, basically, the city would be forming a partnership or an LLC with that company. And then, in here it says Minnesota statute, section 465717, provides that a city may not create a corporation, whether for profit or not for profit, unless explicitly authorized to do so by law. So that's where you're running into, it's probably not something that's allowable.
And even if it were allowable, I have some reservations about the incentive structure in that arrangement. I would not necessarily, to be honest, I wouldn't trust our business partner, no matter who it was, quite frankly.
Okay. Jeff, you have anything to add on this one?
Yep, I sure do. I just assumed that this was just information only. I just got handed this right before this meeting, so for me, I'm not voting on anything tonight. Sounds like we have until first meeting in March, and I plan on going through the information, but I am not thrilled with the city doing a business venture. I just feel this as a private sector issue, but I will go through the information, and I guess we'll see.
All right, I guess, I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion of any kind. I'd hear one. I'd make a motion to approve the application for the permit, and this, I'm mostly making this motion because I won't be at the next meeting, and I don't want to miss out on potentially making a decision that I think is beneficial for us. So I would make the motion to approve applying for the permit and see what happens after we do more analysis. If anything, applying for the permit, I think, sends the signal to maybe other businesses that don't have the community's interest in mind that there will be competition here, and they might not pick Isani as their first spot. So that's my motion to approve the permit application. If anybody has a second. Hearing none, so motion fails. Any other motions?
I motion we just forget about it and let somebody else do it. Free business. You've heard me say this before, I don't feel the city should be involved in this at all. The liquor store's been a different thing, and I support that liquor store, the city owning it, but I kind of with Jeff over here is, I feel that it's a free enterprise. Our previous mayor we had resigned, he was all about free enterprise. And that's where I feel, that's the motion I make.
There is still, we're not making a municipal where there's only one permit in town, which is
It don't
it's
matter,
still a free
I
market.
just don't think we need to
Okay.
get involved in it.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Does anybody have a second for that motion? Hearing none, motion fails. Are there any other motions on the floor?
Nope, I think we should review the information and put it on for our next, what is it? We have until
In
their
March.
first meeting in March.
First meeting in March.
I think that gives us plenty of time to review everything, and I think everybody should come with a yay or nay at that time.
Is that a motion?
Do I need, does that need to be a motion, or just for
Council,
information?
it doesn't have to be a motion. Can just be consensus to bring to the next meeting.
Well, the one in March.
The one in
is-
March?
Oh, I'm sorry,
You
yes,
want-
March
yeah.
4th meeting.
Yep,
I'm good with that.
This was just on for discussion this evening at first, so that's why I would say that.
I would say first meeting in March.
Sounds good to me. George and Nick?
Yeah, I'm good. It's just a tough one.
It is.
Either way.
Okay, sounds good. We will go on to K2 resolution to consider approving variances for a second driveway at 27686 Polk Street.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tyler Barris had submitted an application for 2 variances to install a second driveway with a bituminous milling surface, which is loose millings not paved, on his 35-acre parcel zoned in the R1A Residential Rural District. Section 17 of our zoning ordinance limits properties to 1 driveway and requires surfaces to be concrete, bituminous, asphalt, or a driveway paver system. And as you're all aware, most of our residential parcels are much smaller. So the Planning Commission did review this request for variances at a public hearing on January 21st. And recommended approval of both variances based on the findings of facts which have been included in the packet. There's a resolution for this approval, so if you so choose.
I wasn't here for that meeting, so.
So he has a very large lot, I think it was 35 acres, and he wants to add a driveway access to his pole shed. And we basically said, do your thing as long as it's approved, and that's that. So if there's any.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lundin, second by Councilmember Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. K3, resolution to consider approving a special event permit for downtown Isani street dances.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. City staff has submitted a special event permit application to host the 3 downtown street dances for 2025. This is a process that we used to follow for all of the street dances and city-held events, and we're going to start doing it this way again, just to ensure that the events, you're aware of all of the things that are happening with each event prior to everything being confirmed. So the first dance will be held June 14th from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., featuring Jonah and the Whales. The second will be July 26th, 7 to 11 p.m., featuring the Farmer's Daughters. And the third dance on August 9th from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. would feature Rustic. These bands are all top 40 bands and play a lot of popular music and seem to be our largest draw at these events. The dances will be held at the intersection of First Avenue and Main Street, and the estimated number of people in attendance is 2,000 to 3,000. Sometimes we get 5,000. Food vendors, non-food vendors, and beer wagons will be present at each dance. Alcohol sales will be monitored through the use of wristbands and law enforcement presence. The event will be free to the public. An outdoor stage will be set up in the right-of-way between Isani Retail Meats and the Creamery. Parking for the event will be available at City Hall, Isani Community Center, Eagle Park, and a lot of off-street parking. Given that the events are street dances, some roadways will be closed for the event. Main Street from the railroad tracks to 2nd Avenue, as well as First Avenue from City Hall to the alley south of Quest. Absolute portable restrooms will provide restroom facilities for the event, and they will be placed on First Avenue south of Main Street and on the grass east of Retail Meats, pending approval from Retail Meats. Additional trash and recycling receptacles will be brought in for each event, and city staff will clean up after the event. There will be sound amplification provided outside by the band on stage, and both Public Works and the Police Department will be providing assistance with the event. A letter will be sent out, as we do every year for these events or any events with sound application and parking, taking up a large area or street closures for all residents within a certain area of the city. And so that will go out, usually we send it out in May so that they know, or beginning early June so that they're aware and don't forget that it's coming for the rest of the summer. But we haven't had any complaints since I've been here regarding these events. Should the weather not cooperate for any of the events, it will be canceled, and any cancellations will be posted by the city website and Facebook page as early as possible. It's usually have a phone tree of 5 people, plus the mayor usually, to cancel these events. But it doesn't happen very frequently, knock on wood.
So I have a couple questions on that. For the August 9th date, have you guys contacted the Rum River Rods, or do they usually contact you after that's planned to plan their final show?
We've already been in contact with them this year, and so they're usually very good to work with. And so, yes, it's already been in the works. And they will submit a special event permit for their portion of this event as well.
Okay. And then I did have a resident ask me yesterday, how much does each street dance cost? What is the, I guess, the number with staff time and the number without, if you have that in the back of your head?
I do not have that in the
Okay.
back of my head, especially with staff time, but I do know that we budget annually $20,000 for all the street dances for the year. We usually are under that budget, but it just really depends on the cost of bands, which can vary from year to year. But generally, we try to find really good, affordable bands for our area, which is why we try to book them as early in advance as possible, and that's how we get better bands. But as you know, more well-known bands get more people also, so it's finding that happy medium.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lundin, second by Councilmember Heeman. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item K4, resolution to consider approving a special event permit for 2025 fireworks and Splish Splash Summer Bash.
It's me again, Mayor and Council. This is for a resolution. We've grouped together the fireworks and Splish Splash Summer Bash events because they both take place during Jubilee Days. And we just wanted to make you aware and let you know about the plans for those events. They will take place on July 10th, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., which is the fireworks event in Bluebird Park, and July 11th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., and it's 2 days in a row. The Splish Splash event will include the performance of a kids dance DJ at Bluebird Park, utilizing the Bluebird Amphitheater. We often have a lot of fun activities at that event. There's an event map you'll see within your packet, and it shows we have bottle rockets, we have a lot of great sponsors who donate their time and things towards this event. Minco usually provides popcorn. DW has a sandbox there and a slip and slide, and then we have multiple other water slides and a smaller kids watering area. The ambassadors are involved and usually do face painting, so it's a great community event. We get 2,500 people for both of these events each in that park, so they're both great.
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion to approve by Councilmember Lundin, second by Councilmember Peterson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. K5, Councilmember iPad discussion.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the city issued council iPads are aging, and staff is not able to update at least one of them. That is the one that was purchased in 2017. The other 4 iPads were purchased in 2019. They were previously up for replacement in 2023 in the capital improvement plan. However, at that time, it was determined that council would push it out farther because all iPads were operating efficiently. However, with the one iPad for sure, we're not able to update it, which means we also can't do the multi-factor authentication, which means that we can't get the email that the city uses onto that iPad. So staff is requesting discussion and potential approval to purchase at least the one iPad. But up for discussion if you would like to move that back forward into the CIP plan and replace all iPads in 2025.
George, I know you had a little bit of a input on this. I know we've talked about this in the past during council meetings, so I figured I'd give you first crack at it.
I would like to see some kind of computer or a pad with keyboard. And we were talking about Wi-Fi so that, I know if the city had its own contract, it would cost a lot more. And I was thinking if we went per diem per month for council members for wireless would be a lot more cost saving to the taxpayers than to have the city actually pay, because you guys have to pay an extra $10 or $20 per Wi-Fi. It was just a thought. Something a tad bigger, easier to read when we're going through the budgets. They're really, I mean, you're scrolling and scrolling to the left to get to the end of the line item.
My iPad connects to my Wi-Fi at home. Don't cost nothing.
Mine does too. What about when you're on the road? When you're on vacation, when you go to Hawaii, do you
If I
try
go
to
to
keep
Hawaii, I can
up?
get tied into their Wi-Fi with it.
Sure.
As long as I have the password and their Wi-Fi connection, I can tie into it. Any hotel you go to will give you your user password. If you're on the road, you really ain't gonna pull over, or you're not gonna be driving and looking at your iPad, so,
Sure.
you know,
if you're,
And if I'm on vacation, I really don't wanna sit and go through all this, and if there's a problem, I'll get a phone call. Plain and simple. I mean, when you're on vacation, you're on vacation. You don't need to, you know, it's your personal time, it's not anybody else's. You're all entitled to it.
and I looked at it as it's our personal Wi-Fi too. I mean, it's, I don't know,
It don't cost me
It's
anything
just
to
a
connect
thought.
to my Wi-Fi.
okay.
As long as I have the password, I can put 100 devices on it in my house.
And the devices we get when we log on to a public Wi-Fi or a Wi-Fi, we shouldn't have any worries whatsoever.
And I do believe that that is part of having that multi-factor authentication, so it does have that extra layer of security. I mean, at the time that it went from a paper packet to the iPads, those iPads to replace them are between $200 and $300, but the cost to go with the Wi-Fi built into it, like on our phone plan with Verizon, ended up being about $600 for the iPad, and then it added to the monthly cost for the data plan. And at that time, it was figured that those council members could use a hotspot on their phone or their personal Wi-Fi. To your maybe point about having a monitor, there are definitely councils, many city councils that have a computer. Those actually spots where you're sitting does have jacks and cables. I don't know what the wiring is like, but it's definitely something that if that was the direction of council, staff could look into having monitors put at your spot, so at least that you could see what's being shown on the screens that is up ahead of, on those TVs. So if you needed to have a closer monitor, it's an option.
Do you know the cost of a replacement iPad? I mean, maybe we get him a replacement iPad, and then we can, long-term plan for replacing these other ones. If the one that failed is 2 years older, maybe we have 2 years of cushion to plan for it, and maybe come up with what we want. I'm personally okay with the iPad, but, maybe a laptop would be nice, but I think the iPads are nice and compact and less likely to break. I was carrying in my 2 cups and I dropped this thing today. It's like, man, that's a good thing it's not an iPad, or not a laptop, it's got the OtterBox case and stuff, so I think it works pretty good. I think maybe with a newer one, you could get, better screen resolution that'd be more sensitive to actual touch, because there are a lot of issues with these things freezing and the touch sensor doesn't work right and you gotta restart it. And so I don't know if you have a cost for the iPads, or if you have any ideas for 4 laptops, just to entertain the idea.
To ensure that we can get a case, I would say $300 is what we were looking at, which would be the iPad replacement cost without data plan. Actually, the cheapest location was an Amazon iPad, and then a new case if the current case doesn't fit.
Okay. Nick, did you have something to say?
Yeah, to your point about wanting a keyboard, they do have cases that have keyboards built in, or you can add a Bluetooth keyboard
Right.
for when you're typing. That's like $20.
I got one of those off of Amazon. It works handy if you're really gonna type a lot. They are smaller though, so it takes a little bit of getting used to, but you could probably get a full-size one too.
Yeah.
Quick question. So if I wanted to get my own laptop that wasn't Apple, can you guys set it up? And can I use that?
That was council's direction to staff to set up a personal computer with city-issued email and the multi-factor authentication. That is the direction we would follow.
That's what I would like to do. I would like a better device to be able to sort everything out that we're getting. It'd be easier for me to read.
Do you
Easier
have-
for me to navigate.
do you have
No,
a
I don't.
device?
I'd probably just go buy a new laptop.
If you're gonna do that, we could pass yours down to Nick.
That's true.
I don't know if it can be a personally owned one though, because of all the data record retention and policies.
That's why I asked if they could set it up and be able to.
That was if it was a city laptop.
But I
That can
would
be a personal.
only use it for city. I have my own personal laptop and I have my own personal computer. I just want a designated city use device, and that's all I'd use it for.
Even though it would be a personal device, if the direction was to put a city email and documents on there through email, which is typically how we do it, or through the website, or the application that you go to your packets, That is definitely can be done. There's a very, very small risk that if there ever was some kind of liability lawsuit potential, that we needed to take that device, but that
Right.
would be very minor percentage of odds of that happening, but it
Right.
would be somewhat of a risk if you're looking for any kind of risk, just because of the purposes of any item needed to be taken that was city property, because it had city information on it, would technically, could be cause to take.
A risk for George, not for the city.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
Correct.
Because I'd be purchasing it with my own money at my own expense, so I could have to give it up till I got it back.
Right. Well, I think I would be okay with that. You know, we would solve our situation for, you know, maybe a year or two, get Nick that iPad, and once you get a laptop of your own, and then we could sort of look into budgeting for that. I think the price of $300 a piece is pretty good. So, I mean, I would be okay with maybe trying to queue that up for next year, unless you guys are totally opposed and want them sooner.
So you don't see any issues with that scenario of George getting a laptop with city information on there?
Well, I don't think, to be honest, of all the things that I've heard security-wise that is most alarming would be is connecting to a public Wi-Fi that is not password protected regardless of the device. That's the most, that'd be the part I'd be most worried about. To the extent that we put his city email on his personal device, substantively, he could still put himself in that same situation as with his current setup. Right, I mean, once he's got any city information, packet, sensitive, whatever, on that device, he can still forward that to his personal email and personal device just the same. And any email communication is substantively not secure at its face to begin with. So I don't know that digitally, I don't know that we're taking any additional risk.
So are we not supposed to connect to open Wi-Fi's with these?
I wouldn't recommend connecting any device you ever have
See?
to an open Wi-Fi.
Okay, so
heard
maybe,
that.
maybe we should have our own Wi-Fi
That's
then, because
what my argument was, that's
I
what
mean-
I was saying. We
Yeah,
should
but
just-
but
it should
where are
just
you
have
gonna connect to
Wi-Fi.
open Wi-Fi?
Walmart. I did it at Walmart when I was waiting for my tires to get done on my truck. I had an hour and a half I was doing,
I mean, if you're
City
connecting,
stuff.
if you're connecting to a Wi-Fi that's password protected and the password isn't just posted on the wall, you know, there's at least some measure of security. But if it's, you know, you walk into Starbucks and it's just automatically open, no password required, and anybody that's even reasonably tech savvy and is on that same network knows where you are and can do a little peek around.
Does the city run a VPN server, or could you configure them to require VPN connection back to the city to protect that information?
We try to limit
Ye-
VPN connections
you-
because that is a direct line into the server. So we don't, even internally for staff,
Yeah.
we have two.
In the end, anything that we can do would only be to mitigate risk. In the end, we need all council members and staff to always be cognizant of the fact that your email, regardless of what device you're on, email is never secure, right? Like, you should just assume that anything that ever went out by email or came in by email was potentially viewed by anyone and everyone. That's always my advice on that.
so if you were at a hotel and you connected to their Wi-Fi, even though it's password protected, every room probably has the same password, so you're setting,
Let's just say that when I go to my conference and there's 350 finance directors and I know most of them and I trust them, I do not connect to the Wi-Fi, no.
so we need to do something different here for us then, if that's the case.
Yeah,
Or recommend using a hotspot on your mobile device
that's the
because that would be
safest
password
way.
protected.
But then you're using your data that. you
Yeah, I
know,
don't have
some people
hotspot.
have- Some people have limits, I have unlimited, so it doesn't bother me. I just wanted Wi-Fi for all of us, so we're the most secure we possibly can be.
All right, I guess I'll make the motion to replace the one iPad right here, right now, and then I think we should have further discussion about future long-term planning for our devices.
Second?
A motion by Councilmember Holmgren, second by Councilmember Peterson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. So that motion passes 4-1. I like the idea that you had about the laptop. I think that would satisfy our needs, and we're just as much risk with the iPads, but, all right. So we will buy the new iPad. for Nick. And now we move on to K6, brush at the compost site discussion.
Mayor and council, I had a contractor stop down at the shop like a week and a half ago or so and wanted to know what we were doing with the brush, if he could get a bid on chipping it, and he gave me what I consider a very competitive bid. Just want to know if you want to move forward to get other quotes to have it be chipped, and the chips be left on site for residents or whatever. So, looking for if you want me to move forward with that.
I would like to see more quotes, more estimates, and see if his bid is, good. I'm sure it is if you think it is, but
It's pretty competitive bid, and it's about 3,000 yards of brush that's out there now, and it's a pretty dense pile, so that number is, there's not a lot of air in it. It's got pushed up and stacked up pretty good, so,
okay.
yeah, and I could bring back other bids as well, yep.
And then as far as keeping it on site, would you like to keep that for residents? Do you think people would come get it, or do you think it's gonna be too fine, or what's your thoughts on that?
It's, there's logs in there, which is gonna be a different chip than brush, but I think that we could mix it in with the leaves, because that does help break the leaves down as well, so you can always eventually use it. I think that if you gave residents the option, they might come and use it for something.
Okay. Is that something that we could ask them to chip the bigger stuff in a separate pile versus the smaller stuff? Or do you think that's asking too much? Because then we could use the bigger stuff, or it's just separated so it's more usable?
I think if we just put that in as an option, if you could separate that, it's kind of separated now to a certain extent.
Okay,
But if we just put that in the bid and say, hey, you're gonna have to separate this out, big stuff versus small stuff, and, I don't think they'd have a problem with that at all.
could we do a dual bid where you have separated and non-separated?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I think that sounds good.
And just to clarify, we won't be going out for bid and following bid law, but we would solicit proposals or quotations.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you need a motion on that, or?
We'll bring that forward at the next meeting.
Sounds great, thank you. K7, South Passage Railroad Crossing, continued discussion.
So City Engineer Cook had reached out to BSNF to discuss possibility of extending the crossing work that the city had planned with South Passage, which would be in 2027. The BSNF engineer stated that after discussing with the local maintenance team, the project can be pushed out only to 2026, given the condition. So staff is looking for further discussion on potentially doing this project in 2026.
What does that look like for the budget, Mike?
As far as I'm concerned, that's mostly state aid, if not entirely, right? So Jason and I have gotten over the recent allocations. I would say there should be money. There should be at least enough cushion to cover that.
Yeah, right now, we're looking like we would have, more than enough available in the state aid fund balance this year or next year to be able to do the project. The railroad, did reply with, that their maintenance team were willing to push it to 2026. And on top of that, they were basically saying that was their recommendation even to have it done before our street project, kind of like I was mentioning at the last meeting, so that we would be able to do the project and the patch of the road all the way to the right-of-way limits. So then when we do our project, we don't have to worry about them, we don't have to permit with them, our contractor wouldn't have to be bid to be qualified to work in the railroad area. So it would actually, we were originally talking about the idea of combining it into one, but that concept of a bidder not needing to worry about a railroad and doing the rest of our project may very well end up at least making it a two project just a wash on cost. So I don't have a problem with it being done as the two parts. If anything, it'd be a lot easier coordination, to make sure the crossing is controlled and done properly, and we don't have to worry about the railroad delaying the rest of our project. They're basically being, open to doing this year or next year, and state aid funds would be available for either one. So from the city side, I guess it's kind of your guys' call on which year you'd prefer, but that was their response.
So you're suggesting that we have them do the railroad crossing in 2026, and we actually do South Passage in 2027 still? Is that, or would it just be after, or what are you suggesting there?
Yeah, I guess I was suggesting to still wait. I mean, just because, again, on the state aid fund available topic, to do all of South Passage, we would use up all of our state aid funds. So pushing that out a little longer, we'd need to kind of accumulate a little bit more, but for the actual crossing project, that would be, you know, somewhere in that $90,000 to $100,000, you know, kind of window. That's at least a small enough amount that we can get that done this year or next year. But then we'd still want to have piled up enough, and don't want to speak for Mike, but, you know, to do the actual full project, reclamation.
And can you tell me if Railroad Avenue is a state aid route?
Yes, yes.
So that would be queued up as well, and we have to consider that when we do South Passage.
Right, yep, and that's why I'm saying, you know, we get an allotment every year. We're allowed to get kind of an advance, you know, up to 5 years of that allotment. And next meeting, we'll be bringing you the advance requests that we've kind of already pre-discussed for, you know, the roundabout project, the Isani Hills project that we'll have coming up here with the two roads that are state aid routes, as well as the Mill and Overlay project that has 2 state aid routes. So we'll be bringing an advanced resolution next council meeting, and it'd just be whether or not we add this to that.
Any other questions?
No. Whatever Jason thinks will work best on this situation is, I'm good with.
I mean, honestly, I mean, moving into 2026, I don't see a problem with it. You know, maybe we get that 1 extra year of life, you know, if we're not worried about it having failed. And, you know, we'll have built up more allotment, you know, just in general, but that part isn't too relevant.
If the railroad is willing to work with us in 2026, my preference would be to do the crossing in 2026 and the rest of the road in 2027. We get the extra year toward allocations on state aid, but also I would just as soon have those two be separate. I don't really want to have South Passage closed for an unexpected amount of time because there was some delay with the railroad. I'd just soon keep those two things separate and know that that crossing is going to be closed for a set amount of time, and we can predict that pretty closely and know that that road can be done now in a set amount of time and are not dependent on that crossing. I'd prefer to keep those two separate. Do the crossing in 26 and the rest of the road in 27 as scheduled.
I'll go with that.
Yep.
Works for me.
Nick?
I agree.
Okay. Do you need a motion on that? I see it just says it's a discussion. That seems to be a consensus.
We're just looking for direction.
Okay. We'll let you guys handle that, hash that out. Thank you. So item K8, contractor email list discussion. I had asked to add this one. You know, I've kind of beaten this to death over the last couple of years, but I'll say it again. We seem to have a hard time getting contractors to put in bids. I would love to see, you know, 5 or 6 bids on every project that we do. And I think the more bids we get, the more competitive people would be. With that being said, you know, the BMX bolt tightening project is done. The engineer estimated that would be about $80,000 for that. And, you know, I was able to reach out to a couple contractors, and there was one that actually checks the city website almost weekly, and he didn't see this project. I know it was on there, but it's easy for them to miss it, and he came in with a competitive bid at $41,500. The next closest bid was over twice that at $92,000. You know, I'd reached out to him over email, and that saved $52,000 or $50,000 over the next highest bid. So that got me thinking, you know, why don't we have a list of contractors that we can email? Because, you know, that $50,000 that we saved just on that one project saves the average household $150 in taxes. So I think we need to have an email list that we can send out to as many contractors as we can, and then they can, you know, decide if they want to bid on it or not, because it's impossible for a contractor to check the city website all the time looking for stuff that's, you know, up for bid. I had another contractor today call me, and he said that he would like to know what's going on easier for projects so he could bid, because there's, you know, there's situations where he wished he would have bid, but he didn't know about it. So I guess today I'm asking that we assemble a list of any contractor, and then we can send out, you know, emails to them. You know, if it's, maybe we set a dollar amount, if it's a $10,000 project or more, we send out an email to those contractors or kind of whatever we think would be a good idea. And then also I had a question about preferred contractors. Now, for the preferred contractors, is there a dollar amount on those? Like, say if it's over $5,000, we go out for a bid? Or is it just automatically given to that contractor that we have set as the preferred?
It really depends, Council, it really depends on the type of work being done. If it is a work that we have a contract agreement with for, let's say, plumbing or HVAC or something like that, we don't necessarily go out for other quotations. Sometimes we do if it's a big project, even though we do have a contract with one of those contractors. Otherwise, for every purchase that we make, staff follows our purchasing policy, and that dictates with the threshold of the amount, how many quotes you need to receive, as well as who needs to give approval, if it's just department head, if it's department head and city administrator. So that dollar amount at $5,000, I believe, is 2 quotes. At $10,000, you are required to get 3 quotes. So typically, staff solicits quotes. Now, I want to make sure there's a clear differentiation between quote, proposal, and bid. If we say that we are accepting bid, we must follow bid law. So when we are asking for contractors to give us something, it is going to be a quote or proposal or a bid. Bid law is, we are required by state statute at $175,000 that we must follow all of those rules. If we don't believe that the project is going to meet that threshold, we either do an RFP, a request for proposals, and we laying out the scope and specifications of the project, and we post that on our website. We put it in the paper, our official newspaper. We typically put it on Facebook, and then also with that call, Civic Ready Alert, if people have signed up for that. If it's a smaller project, perhaps it is a short term, we need a curb leak repaired. City staff does have some vendors that we work with that we've had a good relationship with, but we don't call just one, even though we know one would do the job. We always call 2, check on availability and cost for something like that. So it depends on the type of work. All in all, I would say most of the time when they're meeting the threshold that people want to also be involved, we're doing an RFP, and we follow the typical procedure: website, newspaper, and then if no one has turned in a proposal and we're nearing the deadline, staff will start calling people, hey, I know you've done work like this before in the past. Can you take a look? Are you interested? Maybe maybe they didn't know, maybe they're too busy, saw it, don't have time. There could be a number of different reasons why we don't get proposals, but.
Okay. So is there any way that we can, you know, we have our preferred contractors. This particular contractor called me and he wished he would have been able to put in a bid on the Illuminate Isani Electrical, even though we have an electrical contractor. Was that something, or not a bid, or what do you say, a quote would be the threshold on that one, or an estimate?
Yeah, we would ask for quotes or a proposal.
Okay, is it possible that, you know, obviously if you have a toilet that's leaking and needs to be replaced ASAP, you're gonna call your plumber, that's preferred. If you have an electrical issue that's pressing, you're gonna call your electric guy. Is there a way to, you know, if there's something that, say it's gonna cost $20,000 to run some wiring, but it's not that pressing, do you always check with other companies on something like that? Or how do you put out a bid on that? Because you don't really wanna just go to, you know, just say one electric company and they give you a bid that's, you know, really high, and it's like, well, I guess we're gonna take that, because there's no competition at that point.
I don't believe that we did an RFP for the electrical work, but I would say most projects, we do typically go out and look for and solicit quotes at least. But I'm not sure if you can speak to that. Are you aware if we reached out to any other contractors for electrical work?
No, not to my knowledge. I don't believe we ever have.
So then we did go with our city contracted one.
Okay, and I don't think we should do it that way. I think the market needs to know that there's these projects, because I think our electrician has done a good job for us for the money, but at the same point, if we're not allowing competition, we're not really believing in the free market. So I think that, you know, my email idea can kind of tie into that as well. If there's, say, a project over $5,000 that's not pressing, can we just send that out to all the contractors, build up a list? I know Minor Construction was, very happy and that he was chosen for that project at BMX, and he did a good job, got it all done in time, saved us over $50,000. So obviously, he would want to be on that list. Local contractors, they want to get involved, and they also care more about their work. I can guarantee that, Minor put a 5-year warranty on that project. If you have somebody from out of town that doesn't care about their community, they're not going to do the same type of project. So if we can get more people from the community, more businesses involved, I think it would save us money and get us a better product. So is that possible to say, hey, anything over $5,000 estimated or whatever, that we send out to a list of contractors that we have?
We can definitely create a list like that. I would make the request to council that you're not asking staff to break it apart by field of expertise.
Right, yep.
Whether it's HVAC, it's electrical, it's dirt work type, moving dirt, that kind of excavating, sorry. If we just have a running list and we can send it to all of them,
Yes.
they can determine if it's applicable. The other request that I would make, just because of staff time, is that we would not vet out any of these vendors. If they're just asking me to put on a list, we will send out a list, but not to vet out, to make sure that they are licensed, bonded, insured, and that kind of thing until they send us a quote or proposal.
Yep.
Those would be my two things.
I would be okay with both those. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that, but I just wanted to bring forward an idea that, could save us a boatload of money, because I see these bids coming in every month. It's like, there's no way someone can't do that better, cheaper.
I think it's a great
Sorry, Mayor, and
idea.
I guess the third thing that I would request is that we do some type of push to get the word out that we're creating this list, because the one thing that we strive is to not be biased. So that's why if someone asks us, who's your preferred builder in town, Ms. Hillesheim, and we say, we don't give out one, because we might have a favorite, but we don't say it. Because we don't want to give bias to someone, we will give 3, that we can provide 3, but we won't say which one's better than the other. That's not our job as staff, and to put anyone out and compete against each other out there. So that is why we don't personally give recommendations as staff. But if we are going to create a list, we should do some kind of push out there to the public that, hey, we are.
They need to
creating a
come
list.
in here and tell they want to be on the list, because you can't call every flipping contractor in
Correct.
the
Right,
yellow pages.
right.
If they don't reach out, I
Right.
don't care what you do, Lou. If these people don't reach out, it's not on anybody but themselves. And you know what? I hear so many times, oh, I wished I would have known this. Well, did you ever check to see and let them know you want to do this? Did you ever check to see if you're going to do this? It's always day late, dollar short. Oh, I should, I wished I would have known that. Well,
I don't think we're asking for that. I think what we want to do is develop 6 or 7 different type of mailing lists, one for plumbing, one for electrical, one for
I'm going to
dirt work,
request that
and
we
then you
don't do
just
that,
start
just
filling it
because
up
of the
and you
time. And to be
mass it up.
honest, a lot of contractors do multiple fields of work. So I would recommend that we create one list, no matter what the project is, over $5,000, we email out the details to everyone on the list, so everyone is receiving the same information.
You know what, that isn't a bad idea either, because you might have a plumber who knows his friend who does electrical work that happens to have a slow time right now and can get on it and give a good bid, so, yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Then the other thing that we will do as staff is look through our contracts and agreements that we have with our contracted services to ensure that there is not, quote, like, you're giving a certain dollar
What's your
amount. I need to just
contract?
verify that those contracts don't need to be amended, because they may have bid that contract knowing that they were getting X amount of work, so it's just something that staff will need to review.
Sure.
Because you should just be able to write a cover page, press a button, and send it to 30, 40, however many you have in the system, all at once.
We don't have that, but I can BCC them all at the same time via email and send an attachment.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't use Constant Contacts, but they have some cool things out there if you have those kind of software.
Would that be something that could be incorporated in the new website possibly? I know I have 3 contractors that almost call me every week and ask me what's going on, if there's any projects for bid, because they hate our website. And it's too hard for them to constantly check, and it's faster for them to just call. So
I know that there are some, with the new website I'm proposing, there are added features, and some of them do include text and email notifications. I'd have to verify and look up, dig a little further if those are things that you can sign up specifically for. and we can input data that would go out. I can look into that.
Okay.
But to ensure that it gets done, I think that it would be something that staff's going to have to do, and at least for now.
Okay. So if you know any contractors,
Yeah.
get their emails, send them to Josie or Stephanie or whoever. That's,
But I think it should be pushed out into the community so everybody has a fair shot at it. But before we go with the contractor, let's, as soon as they submit a bid, make sure they got all the Ts crossed and Is dotted with the
One thing I-
bonding and insurance wise.
Yeah, one thing I can foresee that we do is to ensure then that staff is for any projects over 5,000 is definitely a lower threshold for us to create our detailed specifications. So that'll take a little bit more work.
I mean, it could be
which is-
10,000. That was just a rough number.
It's whatever dollar amount, council, I prefer that you vote on it as well, just so staff has that clear direction of exact expectations. But that is something that, for a project of 5,000, we may reach out to 3 contractors and verbally say, here's what we're looking at, can you give me a quote on this? We actually, if we're sending it out, we're gonna have to come up with a spec sheet, which is fine too, but just letting you know.
I'd be okay with 10,000 being the threshold for that, because if you look at a $10,000 project, I mean, you might have 10,000 or 9,000, you might, I think you're pretty competitive under that number, but anything over that, I think you can, potential for savings.
And we're gonna make sure with our contractors that we work with now that we're not gonna have any issues. We're gonna look at their contracts.
I will need to review each of our contracts
Yep.
and agreements just to ensure.
Yes.
I know that some of them, I can think of one for sure, has a non-exclusivity clause in there. However, I'd have to review all of them to ensure, because some of those are 3 and 5 years, and I don't want to speak incorrectly.
That sounds good.
If we could get a vote on that?
Okay.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion, or we just need a vote, just,
Well, a motion.
okay.
Yep.
I'd entertain a motion for whatever someone feels like making. I'll make a motion to start an email list and have the threshold at $10,000 in hopes to get more competitive bids on all of our projects to save money.
Second.
All right, motion by myself, second by Councilmember Peterson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? A motion carries 5-0 on that. For K9, I was supposed to receive a letter from somebody, but I haven't yet, so I'll just give you guys a brief summary, I suppose. There's been a lot of talk about potentially a volunteer organization taking over the setup of the event. I didn't know if that was something that we even had the ability to do. I think the biggest cost to the city for Illuminate was obviously the public works time, but if there's an organization that would be willing to take over the setup aspect of it, I don't think it'd be such a bad investment for us to continue to have. So I didn't know if there was any sort of taste for having that discussion at some point. We can put it off till I actually get a letter too, if that's what we need.
What solves one of the problems, but still doesn't solve the problem of storage and dealing with the PD?
Yep, so you'd still have that cost, but at the same point, if you look at, I think there's a lot of people that like it, and if our only cost is literally storage and electricity, I think it's, maybe worth still having it for that amount of money. You're talking, no money for storage technically. How much was electricity? A couple $1,000s? It's pretty low expense. So I didn't know if there was any other ideas, or if we had come up with any other.
I'd say make a motion to table this until
Sure.
we get some more information on it from those people.
Okay, that sounds good.
We could sit here and beat our head against the wall that long in front of this, so. I'd like till we see the letter and what they're actually talking about.
Okay. I hear a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion from Councilmember Lundin, second from Councilmember Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. On to the consent agenda. Are there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lundin, second by Councilmember Holmgren. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The consent agenda is approved. Any other communications or adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Lundin to adjourn, second from Councilmember Holmgren. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0, therefore we are adjourned.